Hello, everyone. I decided to make a few shorter videos instead of one really long one, because I'm going to try to talk about uh, a few different things. And, a 40-minute video is not ideal, and it's kind of harder for my end to keep to keep ideas separate if I don't, cut it up. So I'm going to cut this up a little bit. I want to talk about, you could say, what seems like the image that we have to hold in our minds of the way a love story realistically could exist for us nowadays, like for the really broken and deracinated, and just for like the modern human who doesn't know what it is to be a person, and maybe never really feels like has never really felt like a human. So, if we ask the question of what is preventing, like what are we doing to make it such that society is unromantic and like unable to fall in love, like that the men are not, they find themselves unable to meet an actual woman and fall in love with her, and the women find themselves unable to meet an actual man and fall in love with him. There's kind of I want to look at this from two sides. And these are going to talk about specific issues because they're issues specifically related to gender. So, like the reason porn, for example, is such a relevant subject here is because it is connected to the way that men relate to women. So you don't fix you don't fix the larger gender brokenness without fixing the parts of it. So if we talk about the men, like the category that is extremely broad is like current or recovering like porn users. So they have this very broken, like, it's, I'm probably going to make a separate video about this, but like a just kind of a ruined view of women. Like there's no like, that's not easy to undo if you've trained yourself to view women that way. And it doesn't matter if you thought you were training yourself or not. You were. So you've in some way like deeply disenchanted yourself regarding women. And then it because men are often ashamed of having like a porn problem, I think the shame kind of gets transferred in a way, and becomes a resentment toward women, and kind of women broadly, like becomes this women are sluts type thing, when it's like, you voluntarily watched this, or at least maybe you weren't introduced to it but you kept watching it. And I know there's a separate thing because people get introduced young, and I'll probably talk about that a bit, like but in my mind, it seems that there's a strange correlation between the image of kind of the deeply broken, kind of angry. I think angry is the right way to think of it. Like an angry man who lives in this conflict between lust and resentment for the same women, and it's just a hellish cycle that he's stuck in. So as long as you're in that, you're not going to be able to fall in love. I don't think you're not going to be able to find women enchanting or interesting in any way beyond the sexual. Really, the error that's been made is that is kind of you've failed to acknowledge the fullness of a person, and only, like, quote unquote, fallen in love with them in like a physical way. And that has probably made it so that women now seem like a purely physical being, which is broken and untrue, and certainly keeps you from that beautiful image of two old people who are ugly and old and wrinkly now being in love with each other. From the woman's side, you have a lot of the same thing, realistically. Like, women are, quote unquote, sexually liberated nowadays. So there's like, women read stuff more than they watch it, but they watch stuff too. And then, whereas I don't think women necessarily feel quite as much shame because women are just different. I think for men, it's like the strong desire, and then you give in to the desire, and it's like this immense feeling of shame. Whereas I think women are kind of just, they would think that they were just having fun. But the men that they meet, they would think of as kind of gross and pervs and controlling, or like quote unquote patriarchal or something, or just jerks, like pigs, stuff like that. They don't at all live up to the ideal, and the ideal is conditioned by all kinds of fantasy, whether it's shows or books or all these kinds of things. So the women exist in this state of feeling like there's no good guys left. There's no interesting guys. Love is impossible. That's a fairy tale. And the common thread between the men and the women is that they both have different things that they're doing or ideas that they're holding to that are like, scraping any ounce of enchantment left out of their own heart. Right? Any ounce of enchantment for the opposite gender. And just making them this kind of barren, like sad, feelingless creature that can't fall in love. Of course, people do have feelings still, but we have to be really honest about how messed up things are right now. And then if we go on to what's trying to be done to fix this problem, like if I think what is the image that is being sold of how a modern romance should go, and I don't know, maybe people aren't even thinking about that image, but if they are, it seems like it's just dog water. It's like, I guess some people think that they're gonna, like, the classic, like, men trying to defend watching porn after marriage. It's like, if that doesn't disgust you, like, absolutely disgust you, if that is an image of a good marriage to you, if a good marriage includes that, I don't even know what to say. If like, I kind of don't think we have an image of like falling in love now. I don't think we have a way for that to work. Maybe set in a different time period, which is very telling for the place where we are right now. But we've all, I think, very much given up on the knight in shining armor, and that's kind of, maybe that's fair. But like, people still do sometimes try to like be able to quote unquote fall in love. A really troubling trend in like from the male side is like a gamification, like get game and learning like dating strategies and ways to, basically it's just lots of different ways to trick women into thinking you are something you're not, and then you get good at it or whatever, and like, oh, now I'm like successful, and it's basically just like trying to sleep around essentially. And like, this can't be denied, what's really common is people just clocking out, or checking out, and men just saying like, all right, this isn't real, whatever, and resigning themselves toward, that draw toward something high and romantic and lovely, just having, kind of be half satisfied by fantasy for your entire life, or until maybe that passion that you feel kind of starts to die with age. And then from the women's side, women will go for like genuinely bad dudes, I think, out of a desire to feel like love, So it's, in a way, there's like this tragic, the man who gamifies the system ends up with the woman who is willing to go for a bad guy just to feel something, and it's this awful like maybe that's the image. Unfortunately, maybe that's the realistic modern image of love right now is that the man who's going to try to trick a woman into liking him, and the woman who, if she was honest, kind of knows she's being tricked and doesn't care because she just wants to feel something real. So this is like awful. I think that's a horrible image. I think it's unrealistic. I think it denies how bad things are, and you can't really start to build again unless you're willing to say, like, unless you're willing to be honest about the depth of the problem and how bad things really are. The image that I am kind of proposing is of the modern love story is Adam and Eve. And just like a quick rundown, Adam and Eve live in a state of this purity and innocence and communion with God in the garden, and then Eve is tempted and succumbs to the temptation, and Adam succumbs to temptation afterwards. It's probably up for discussion whether or not Adam knew quite as much. Like, there's a way that he might have known a little more and done it anyways, which is interesting to think about regarding eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Anyways, the point is that they fall, and then they're kicked out of the garden. So the state is that you had a man and a woman who had this innocence and this purity about them, and then they fell. And it's after they fell and were kicked out that they start having kids, right? They have Cain. The reason I think this is a relevant image for the modern, what we're living in right now is that you have the man who's like, goodness, I've messed up. I've fallen below what I should be. Like, I've ontologically become a lower kind of being. I've ruined myself. And then a woman who has ruined herself. And you have this kind of, like, I think the conversation that people need to be willing to have with the opposite gender right now is like, hey, I'm a guy who's super, super messed up, and I've ruined my own life countless times in so many ways, and I don't even know what it is to be human, right? It's like Adam and Eve had humanity, had like ultimate humanity, or well, that's kind of a different thing, but they had something very good, and they gave it up. They lost it. So in the same way, we're kind of in this place. I think the conversation that has to happen is this acknowledgement of how fallen you've gotten, and I mean specifically in your own life, like, since you were born, the countless ways you've messed things up for yourself, and then the other person, likewise, has to be willing to say, look, I've fallen and tripped myself up, and I'm so broken at this point that the normal, like, I'm not even normal. I don't even have good impulses per se. But we still both, for whatever crazy reason, have this kind of stubborn ghost of an idea that, like, being in love is possible and is a good thing. So do you want to go out? Do you want to get lunch or whatever? This is the image. We got to move beyond the very childish, like, high school crush thing. I don't think we're there. Like, we're not, and I'm definitely talking to myself to some degree, but, like, if you're a man and you think, I'm going to find some woman who's just, like, untainted, it's like, are you untainted? Like, do you think you deserve that? And likewise, if you're a woman, like, do you really deserve that guy? So the foundation of the modern romantic story has to be something like, a mutual acknowledgement of the brokenness of yourselves, right? And then from that, the possibility of actual love blossoming. There's I'm actually just thinking of this now. There's a story called I think The Gifts of the Child Christ, or The Gifts of the Christ Child, by George MacDonald, who's a really great old Scottish writer. And they're at the, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's very applicable to this subject, that, like, you know, coming to grips with the tragedy of the thing and then love can actually happen. There's this, it's like, maybe this is the way things have always worked. There's the initial feeling of like, we could be anything, and then you realize like, nah, they're messed up and I'm messed up and I'm contributing to this being messed up. But maybe the love could be a little stronger than the different ways that both of us are broken. And I think that's really Adam and Eve in a lot of ways. That's only one element. I mean, there's way too much in Adam and Eve to just be like, and this is what Adam and Eve means. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the image needs to be one of, you're someone who, in a lot of ways, being in the garden is like being a child. You're in that innocence and you fell. And nowadays we've all fallen like hard and far. So, you're at the bottom of the mountain, but you find a girl who's also at the bottom of the mountain. You've got to think of Eden as a mountain here. Or maybe not. Maybe just the top of the mountain. I don't know. It's on a mountain at the very least. It's at the top of a mountain. And you're at like the bottom of the mountain, you're on the edge maybe of the world. And you find a girl there who's also at the edge, and she's insane and, as wacky as you, and you're both crazy, messed up. You need to be, I think the image that you have to be willing to fall in love with is to fall in love with someone who's as messed up as you in the ways you are. And it's going to be weird, but you actually can. I think a very realistic thing is the ability to bond over suffering, even if it's self-inflicted suffering. But it's not going to happen if you are, if you're possessed with, if you're trying to, if you don't sincerely want to move toward something beautiful, if you're just looking to jump to point out, and if you're just looking for a preconceived notion to be validated, if you're a man and you start trying to date a modern woman and you're just looking for the opportunity to catch her, right? Catch her being a awful modern woman, or if you're a woman and you get in a relationship just knowing he's going to let you down soon, and you're going to realize he's just as sexist as everyone else, blah, blah. Like, you do have to have a little optimism, but it has to be like a realistic, you have to be very honest. I think that's what hope is, because hope definitely acknowledges the bleakness of what you're in. Another point about Adam and Eve that should be mentioned is that Adam wants to blame Eve, but it's not ultimately Eve who gets the blame, it's Adam. And I think this is very relevant to why, at least for me, it's so, you could kind of say, aesthetically gross when I hear men being like, it's the women, bro, the women are ruining society, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's your job to make it nice. Like, the women would not have ruined it if men wouldn't give them attention. Like, give them certain kinds of attention, right? Like, Marilyn Monroe is famous because of the attention men gave her. Porn largely exists because men will watch it. Like, maybe women would watch it, but it would not be what it is today. So don't do this stupid, like, kind of, it's fundamentally unmasculine in my mind for men to sit around and be like, man, these modern women, dude, as they, like, smoke their cigars or whatever. It's just cringy to me. So the desire to blame women is primordial, I think. It's very, like, of course guys are doing that, but you can't do it. It's your job. So hopefully that can be an image that can be accepted as, one of the best things you can hope for And remember that like Adam and Eve are kind of archetypical of all of humanity. So this is kind of the only image we should expect. It's two super broken people. I think nowadays the brokenness has become so intense that it's easy to like feel like things are irreparable. But, ultimately they're not irreparable. Um, and I don't think if they were irreparable, if you even thought they were irreparable, you'd even be watching this. So, very well.